So hello, everyone. It's good to be here, and thanks for joining us. I'm very excited today for a conversation with Dr. Joe Sumrall. And by way of introduction, your bio leads with Dr. Sumrall is a Christian who deeply cares about and is dedicated to provide the most comprehensive dental care available today. And when you opened your first office in 1983, you and your family dedicated the practice as a ministry to your patients and to your community. Congratulations on that. You are a graduate of the Medical College of Georgia School of Dentistry. Your family came to Warner Robins, Georgia in 1966 when your father was hired as head football coach for Warner Robins High School. Yeah. As a student, you were an active participant in junior and senior high school sports, earning a football scholarship to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, where you were a two-sport D1 athlete. You and Jeffrey Ann have been married for 48 years?
Let's see. We've married in 78, so almost 46.
Almost 46, okay. And together you share the joy of 5 children and 9 grandchildren. 9 grandchildren. Yes, and we get to share one of those.
Yes, we do. Hopefully. Many more.
Many more, right. and by the way, Benjamin is in the room, and you hear that.
Well, he's the one who told me that there would be many more.
Yeah. So that's not a rumor.
Lord willing.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
So lots of things to talk about, and not sure where to start. So I'm going to just jump in with what made you decide to attend the Citadel, our mighty Citadel?
Well, I was offered a football scholarship. Back then, the head coach was Bobby Ross, who I guess he ended up in the NFL coaching. But he was at my house one day and interviewed me, offered me a football scholarship. And I do remember my receiver in high school was Doug Johnson, and Doug was not very fast, but Doug could catch a ball. And so I told Coach Ross, I said, you really need to look at Doug Johnson too, because he's got great hands. I said that the only ball I ever saw him miss, we were in a game, and he caught it for a touchdown, but he dropped it. But as God is my witness, I believe he caught it before it hit the ground, but it was ruled incomplete. So, and we were down 21-0 going into the first half, and we really needed this catch. And so came to the sidelines, and Doug and I and Coach Orgel was our head coach. Doug said, "Coach, I caught that ball." He said, "Well, they ruled it incomplete." So he said, "Let's do it again. I'll catch it." So we ran the same play. It was like 3 guys covering him. I threw it to him, and the rascal came down with it. And so we went in down 21-7. We ended up winning that game 28-27. But anyway, Doug could catch the football. So I kind of didn't talk him into it, but I influenced him to offer Doug a scholarship. And as things would have it, Doug actually did much better at the Citadel than I did. But that's another story.
Maybe we'll get to that.
Yeah, maybe. There are some stories there, but anyway.
So the Citadel, what scholarship to get there? So your schooling was paid for partly?
Yeah. I had been offered some other scholarships at smaller schools. One was Troy University in Alabama, smaller school. But I knew that I wanted to be a dentist, so I was concerned about the education. And honestly, I'd never even heard of Citadel, didn't even know where Charleston, South Carolina was. I mean, you have to understand back then, I'd been to like 4 states. And the only reason I'd been to Alabama is because to get to Mississippi, where my parents were from, you had to drive through Alabama. So I'd never even been to South Carolina, actually. Well, once, but it's only because me and a buddy of mine just walked across the line, just to say we'd been. So anyway, so we the one thing I did asked Coach Ross before I went, I said, I want to make sure that I'm going to be allowed to play baseball, because I was really a much better baseball player than I was football player. I had been offered a baseball scholarship to Georgia Tech, but I just not a big city guy. I didn't want to go to Atlanta. And but I thought I wanted to play some more football. So I ended up going to the Citadel, which was an all guys back then military school. So they called it the West Point of the South. So anyway, so I go off to the Citadel for 4 years.
And what was you were in the regiment?
Everybody it's military. You take ROTC and it's uniforms on campus 24/7 for 4 years.
Had you been exposed to anything like that before? Family members or anybody in the military?
Well, my dad had been
in
what was then I can't remember exactly, but my dad had been in the service, but, just around World War II and that sort of thing. But the Army Air Corps was what he was in. That's what it was called back then. But no, I wasn't. I mean, of course, Warner Robins is a big military town. It's a big Air Force base. I mean, that's how Warner Robins became Robins Air Force Base there. So it's huge, huge base. Most everybody that is there because of the base. We were one of the few people that came, not because of the base, but was for football.
And the regiment, what was it like stepping into that? I've always wondered, either basic training or regiment training, what's it like to go from civilian life into that all of a sudden?
It was, well, I tell you, the first day seemed like it was about a week long. The first week seemed like it was about a month long. The first month seemed like an eternity. But it was not a lot of fun, but it was going to be a way to get an education. I'm one of 5 kids. Like I said, my dad was a high school football coach. I had 4 sisters. So
older, younger, where were you?
One older, 3 younger.
Okay.
So I knew there was not going to be funds for Daddy to send me to college. So I was going to have to make it one way or another, work for it. So might as well work on football fields. So it was a full scholarship, which I didn't know it at the time that it was as prestigious a college as it was, but that was just ignorance. I just didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. But I made the best of it that I could. I do remember probably one of the first times God ever spoke to me in like an audible voice.
Yes.
It was kind of one of those things that was, I remember wishing it away. I remember there was times that you're just so miserable. And you're from daylight to dark, and it's just like, it just never stops. I'm like, I was just wishing it was over. And I remember God saying in a very calm voice, Joe, don't wish your life away. It's going to go fast enough as it is. He said, every day is a gift. You need to receive it that way. And it was just one of those things. It was just like, I don't know that God had ever spoken to me like that. And it was not big fanfare or nothing. It was just like, and so what do you say? But yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And
the high command.
Yeah. And
how old or what year in school were you, do you think, when that happened?
I'm sure that was my freshman
year.
Freshman year. Yeah. Because it was just like, I mean, your freshman year is your knob year. They have a lot of other terms too. I can't remember them all. Not some of them aren't repeatable. But so your entire knob year, you're just you walk in the gutter. You can't walk on the grass. You can't speak on campus. When you go, you can't look around. You look straight ahead. You're just it's just you're a knob.
So you were a freshman probably when that happened, and that influenced you. Well,
it just made me realize that every day is a gift.
Mm.
None of us promised tomorrow, and you don't want to wish it away because it will go fast enough. And of course, that's as you get older, you realize how quickly time passes, and it's just like the Bible says, it's a vapor. It's just it's vaporizing as we speak,
Yes.
literally.
It sure is. Yes. So, sports obviously had a big part in your life. Did you, when you were playing football and baseball as a younger kid, when did you realize that was likely to be your ticket, we'll say, to college? And did it play out that way?
I never really, I don't know that I actually ever thought about it. Until maybe my senior year, and we were not very good. I remember there's always, I guess for most high school athletes, particularly football, when you're a rising senior, I guess the spring of your junior year, when you're at spring practice, and you realize that there are no upperclassmen anymore, you are the upperclassman. And the team is depending on you, and you look around and the coach says, we may not win a game this year with what we have. I mean, we were playing the highest division in Georgia, and we had one guy that weighed 200 pounds. One. And he ended up going to Georgia on scholarship, but he was a junior. He was a junior when I was a senior. But so we weren't very good, but we didn't know we weren't very good. And so we won 9 ball games. We got beaten in the playoffs 10-7 by one of our rivals in Macon. But 7 of the 9 ball games we won in the last minute of the game, or pretty close to the last minute. And they coined us the cardiac kids but the thing about it is we were small, but there was not any quit in any of the guys. Nobody thought, oh, we're going to lose this game. We're just like, I kind of think about the prize fighter that's beating the little kid, the small little fella, and he wears himself out, beating up this, and the kid just still gets back up, We just kept getting back up, and we just kept playing until the horn sounded, and lo and behold, sometimes we'd be ahead. So anyway, but we had a bunch of guys that just played hard and wouldn't quit, and it was a good year. We had a great year.
That was football.
That was football.
Yeah. How about baseball?
Baseball, we one game in the last game my senior year. We were trying to make it to the playoffs, and we had the bases loaded, and we got picked off first base, and the coach had just got out of his mouth, "Don't get picked off. There's no need. This guy on third." We got picked off, so we didn't make the playoffs there. But we had a good season. I had a great baseball coach, Stan Gann, who was an athlete, played at Georgia Tech. Just a great guy. I mean, he was everything. As a matter of fact, I had the opportunity to speak at his funeral, along with Bill Curry was one of his classmates, and but Coach Orgel was the head football coach. Coach Gann was kind of the quarterback and backfield coach, and so I had Coach Gann for baseball coach and football coach, and so we were just very close. He was the kind of coach that coaches ought to be, but he was a great guy. Great guy. I'm gonna miss him.
How about in the Citadel, football and baseball? What was that like, transitioning up?
Well, I was a little disappointed from the baseball side, because the way worked. Coach Ross did allow me to play baseball, but the caveat that I didn't know about was that he'd let me go out there and play the games, but if practice interfered with spring football practice, I had to go to spring football practice. So I was literally playing spring practice football, throwing a football, and the very next day, I'm a relief pitcher and pitching against Wake Forest. So Coach Port, who was the baseball coach at the Citadel, only used me as a relief pitcher. I was a much better hitter than I was a pitcher, but I just didn't get that opportunity because Coach Port couldn't really depend on me because I had to go to football practice. So that was a little bit of disappointment to me because I really thought I was a much better baseball player than I was football player. But, oh well, that's life.
That's life. That's
right.
Life. All for a reason.
You do the best you can.
That's right. So those coaches obviously had an influence on your life, probably continue to today. Your dad.
Some positive, some negative.
Some positive, some negative, yeah.
We don't have to go in all that.
Your dad was the head football coach at your high school.
Okay. Yep. When we moved to Warner Robins, I'd never heard of Warner Robins. We were in Thomasville, Georgia. Daddy had been a very successful football coach in Thomasville. And in 65, Frank Orgel, who had been playing in NFL, who was from Albany, Georgia, had gotten hurt. So Daddy had read about him in the paper. He was home. He was, recouping from injury. And so I don't know how Daddy got in touch with him, whether he called him, whatever. He didn't know him. He didn't know Daddy. But Daddy said, "Why don't you come over and help me coach?" And Frank said, "I don't know anything about coaching." He said, "Well, just come on over.
You might know the game.
You might know the game." And so the fall of 65, Frank helped Daddy coach at Thomasville. Lo and behold, about January or February of 66, David Perdue, who was the superintendent of schools in Houston County, Warner Robins, called down there and wanted to know if Frank wanted to come and be head coach at Warner Robins High School. And Frank was like, "I literally have coached 3 months as an assistant. I know nothing about coaching." So he asked Daddy to go up there with him for the interview. So he did. So after a lengthy interview, Daddy said, we had made all this list of things that he was going to need. And because Warner Robins prior to this had won, I think my math is right, they had won 8 football games in the previous 10 years.
Not 8 championships.
Not 8 championships, 8 ball games in 10 years. So anyway, as the interview was going along, Coach Orgel finally looked at David Perdue and he said, "I'm not the guy you want." He said, "That's the guy you want." He pointed to my dad. And so David Perdue said, "Well, Joe, why don't you come up here as head coach and bring Frank with you?" So for $1,000 a year raise, that's what he did. So we packed up and went to Warner Robins.
You were how old then?
I was 11.
11.
I was 11. And so people would say, "Well, where are you going?" And I'd say, we're going to Warner Brothers. And then I'd say, no, it's not Warner Brothers. It's Warner something, but I can't remember. It was Warner Robins. Of course, like I said, I was 11. So I remember Daddy coming in and saying, "What do you think about moving to Warner Robins?" I said, "I'm going wherever you're going. I'm going with you. I ain't staying here." So anyway, and I loved Thomasville. It was great. It was great growing up there in Thomasville. But anyway, so we moved to Warner Robins. First year, Daddy was coaching. They won 1 ball game. They were 1-9. And Daddy wondered, what in the world have I done?
What was his record like? What was the team like at Thomasville?
He had won, I don't know exactly what the record was, to be quite honest with you.
That's okay.
But he was successful there in Thomasville. So come the second year, they won 5 ball games, went 5-5. And they're like, oh man, we're really rocking. And third year, they won 9 ball games, went 9-1. And the fourth year, went 9-1. Okay, so now I'm a freshman.
I was gonna say
and Daddy had taught the guys who had coached their sons, and it's like you're danged if you do and you're danged if you don't, So he became the principal. And Frank Orgel became the head coach. Okay, so Frank was the head coach my sophomore, junior, and senior year, which is the only 3 years he ever coached high school football, because after that he went into college. And actually he was in college and was coaching with Pat Dye at one point. And I actually played against him when he was with Pat Dye at East Carolina, and I was at the Citadel. So we played against each other, but that's another story there too. I want to go down that rabbit hole, but
we might later.
We might, but anyway. So Daddy became the principal. So he only coached there 4 years, but went from 1-9 to 9-1, and basically 3 years. And the last 2 years it was 9-1. The one was the Central of Macon, which we ended up beating them my sophomore year, I believe it was. We beat them for the first time. So Daddy was principal my sophomore and junior year, and then he became. Houston County was growing like crazy, and so Daddy became the coordinator for the county. So he just he coordinated athletics for the whole county, and he did that up until he retired. So
yeah, it was like having a football coach, realizing he wasn't your coach, but what was the relationship between you and your dad? And
Daddy, he was a great coach, and I'm biased obviously, but I would go to camp. I started going to camp. I think I was like 3, 4, maybe. I know Daddy would tell a story about. I don't even remember this, but I do actually kind of a little bit. But back in the, I don't know, this would have been about around 57, 58. He was at Thomasville. We'd go out to Camp Piney Woods, which was not far outside of Thomasville, but it was just these cabins, and you'd have offense, defense, and didn't even have it was just a field. It wasn't marked off or anything, they get metal cleats, all this sort of stuff. And I'm over under a oak tree playing in ant bed, and I don't know, 3, 4 years old. And the play got run over there. And I'm not paying attention. I'm not watching anything. I'm just playing with ants. And they got piled all on top of me. And Daddy thought, oh my gosh, they've killed my son. He said he kind of got them all off of me and picked me up, dusted me off. And he said, I was fine. Put me back down. I went back to playing with ant bed. But anyway, so I was around football.
And a football player was born.
I was around football all my life. And so I would sit there, and I knew football because I sat there and watched thousands of football games with Daddy, film, all that sort of stuff. I remember back then, after a game on Friday night, going to the Greyhound bus station to get the film, the actual reel from the night before. But anyway,
what drew you, or were you placed as quarterback?
I think they tried to get anybody but me to play quarterback. It was kind of the way it seemed. I was small, but I was slow, was what the coach used to say. And I'm not sure that there was anything else I could play. But I guess in the 6th grade, I was playing center. And so when we got to junior high in the 7th grade, for some reason, I decided I want to play quarterback. So I went out for quarterback. And so I stayed at quarterback from then until, I kept on. So
did you play You played quarterback at the Citadel as well?
I played quarterback.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I did kick. I was a pretty good punter. And I kicked extra points and kicked off and all that. I did that all through high school. I had a pretty good average my junior year in high school, but the day before football practice, my senior year, it's the day before we're starting our summer drills for the fall. I was playing baseball and I hit a ball in between second and short, and the guy made a high throw, and I was trying to get under the throw, and I just dropped on the base and just tore my ankle completely up. And so I show up the first day of football practice, my senior year, on crutches. Couldn't even have contact until the first game.
Ooh.
Didn't even have contact. All through spring practice, all through fall practice, couldn't even have contact. Had to take my ankle up. So it kept me from punting. Couldn't punt. I couldn't do my foot that way. But we kicked straight on back then. There weren't soccer style kickers. So I had a square toe shoe that I could strap up and I could still kick. I couldn't punt. So, but anyway, so I kicked, and I did do some punting in college a little bit. When when our punter was hurt or whatever, I did a little of that and a little kicking until we got a soccer style kicker. But,
yeah, great. Graduate from the Citadel.
Graduate from Citadel.
Time for dentistry school. So let's just, before we get to that, what made you, or what the path to dentistry? How did that all develop?
Well, my dentist was Dr. Daugherty, Fred Daugherty, who I'm sure he's passed, but he had played football. And I remember one thing he told me was, he said, when you get older, he said, nobody will remember you played football except for you. And you'll remember every morning when you try to get out of bed. But
words of wisdom then, not heard until later.
Not heard until later.
Or felt.
Well, and then, of course, my mother, God bless her, said, you can do anything you want to do except coach football. I mean, she had 5 kids and a coach's wife and always, the time away and that sort of thing. So, but anyway, in the 7th grade, when guys were wanting to be firemen and policemen and whatever, I wanted to be a dentist. And
what was it about dentistry that was there anything in particular?
I don't, I guess working with my hands, helping people out. I mean, it's, oddly enough, I was telling a patient this the other day. I said, I was very, very shy growing up. It was all I could do to get in a huddle and actually call the signals. I was very shy. I remember I took a public speaking course. I think it was the 7th or 8th grade. And for the public speaking course, you actually had to speak.
Before the public.
Yeah. Before the classroom.
Before the classroom. Yeah.
I never did it. I never, somehow I got
How'd
sick.
You got sick.
I never did it. And that's another story, but we'll might cover that later. Never did it. But I didn't realize until I got to dental school that people hated going to the dentist, because I always loved it. It was great. I didn't have a whole lot of issues. I had one little feeling growing up. It was mostly going there, get your teeth clean, talk to the dentist, he was a nice guy and encouraged me toward dentistry and that sort of thing. So then I get out and I'm like, golly, I'm in this profession that people hate to come see. It's like, so that was an adjustment, and trying to make a uncomfortable visit as comfortable as possible. I guess just trying to make things as easy as possible. I always hated shots. So I tried to be the best shot giver I could be, because if you can do that, then it's helpful. Just try to basically treat people the way you want to be treated. Try to make it as easy as you possibly can. So that's what we try to do.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So dentistry school from the Citadel.
Yep.
Applied to several schools or one? Or?
No, I applied to basically. It was very, very difficult back then to get into a school out of your state. I did apply to South Carolina, which I was at in Charleston at the Citadel. I applied there. In Georgia, we only had 2 schools at the time. It was Emory and Georgia, in Augusta, Medical College of Georgia in Augusta. It's another name now. They change the name every so often for some unknown reason. But back then it was the Medical College of Georgia. So Medical College of Georgia was a public school, and Emory was private. Okay, so obviously Emory was a lot more expensive to go there. But I applied to both. I got in Emory first, which was I was excited that I had gotten in school, and then later on, a month or so later, I got the acceptance to Medical College of Georgia. So I ended up going there for 4 years.
For 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the dentistry tract? Is it 4 years after college?
4 years after college.
Yeah. And when you're in dentistry school, how are you're doing classes? Are you in the dentistry profession at all? How does that transition?
Yes. I think Medical College of Georgia did a very good job at that. I know at Emory you did like all your books for first couple of years, and then you get into the actual working on patients. But at Medical College of Georgia, you kind of started out your freshman year. With simple things, but just kind of getting you into it. So it was integrated. I feel like a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they did a good job with that. And so you start seeing patients your freshman year. Now doing, like I said, simple stuff, and then you get to more of the complex as you get. And then by the time you're a senior, it's more clinical than books. It's just then the other stuff is just like business and things like that you probably should have paid more attention to. That because you get out, you actually have to run a business.
Yes,
it's not just seeing patients.
Mm-hmm. You're out of college. So let's add another element here.
Okay,
Jeffrey Ann.
Yes,
you met her when?
I met her my freshman year of dental school. Actually, I take that back. I actually met her when I was at the Citadel. I actually dated her younger sister, Beth, was a blind date through a mutual friend at the Citadel, because Jeffrey Ann and her family were from Sumrall, South Carolina, which is 20 miles up the road from Charleston. So I actually met Jeffrey Ann while I was at her house, taking her sister Beth out for a date. And her sister Beth had her childhood sweetheart was a good friend of mine at the Citadel, Craig, and so they were kind of on a break, I guess, and they ended up getting back together. But I had met Jeffrey Ann. So I guess after right around Christmas, my first year of dental school, which was a year or so later, the same friend that got me and Beth together as the blind date asked if I wanted to go out with her, Jeffrey Ann. And so I called her and asked her out. And so we went out for the first time, January the 20th, 1978. She was actually at Columbia College up in Columbia, South Carolina, which was only, 60, 70 miles from Augusta. So I drove up there on a Friday and went out, and I told her, when I called and asked for the date, I told her, I said, we'll go out Friday night, and if you have a good time, we'll maybe do something Saturday. you don't have a good time, I'll go back home. And so I stayed till Sunday. And the rest, as I say, is history. So we've been got married in August of 78.
How long did you date?
Well, from January the 20th until August the 12th, however long that is. What, 6-7 months?
Meaning you were married then?
Yeah, we got married.
Okay.
How
long was the engagement?
Not very long.
Did it have to be long?
No,
it doesn't
didn't have to be.
long.
No, it doesn't. It was kind of one of those things.
You knew.
We had both. Yeah, it was. I think we were both pretty smitten, but
and still are.
Yeah. After all these years.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in medical school. You're married.
Married.
Yeah.
My wife tells me that she will, after dental school, she'll go anywhere I want to go to practice dentistry, except Warner Robins, which, again, God has a great sense of humor. So after dental school, we go to Summerville, South Carolina for 9 months. Let's see. Jimmy Carter's president. Interest rates are 21%.
Life is great.
Life is just wonderful.
I'm ready to make my millions, but I got to pay 20% for my money.
Yeah. And so, but I was, there was a couple of guys in North Charleston, Doctors Jeter and Welch, that I worked as an associate for 9 months. Now, I would go in at 5 o'clock when they were through and work till about 11
p.m.
Did that 5 days a week. Actually hired a little 18-year-old girl from Somerville, and the two of us would drive down to North Charleston from Somerville, just the two of us in this office at night with patients coming in and out. And it was, you wouldn't even think about doing that now, but we made it work somehow. But after 9 months, I told my wife, I said, I need to go home. We got to, we were, some days we'd make enough to pay the electrical bill, and some days we weren't. I said, I got to go home. I got to go where people know me and I know them. And so I tell people now that the toughest extraction I ever had to make was extracting my wife out of South Carolina. She started talking to me about a year later, and not totally too jesting, but anyway, now she realized that was absolutely the thing we needed to do. She just didn't see it at the time. So basically, and I know it said 83 somehow. That's not correct. It was actually 82. It was February of 82 that I started a practice in Warner Robins, February of 82. I interviewed a young lady as an assistant, and I'm not sure who was more nervous, she or I. But Sandra, she was Sandra Esco at the time. Anyway, she came up to me, I guess a few months ago we had a dental thing, and she said, I need a picture with you. I said, okay, well, what's this about? She said, this is our 42nd anniversary of when you hired me.
She still works for you now?
Well, no, she doesn't. She doesn't. She works she works part-time for a periodontist in town, but we're still very close, very, very good friends. So anyway, started there in a office that had previously been a dental office across from the hospital. And that was February of 82, like I said. And then about a year later, we moved into a building. We built a small dental office right next door to where we presently are, because we built a newer office later. And like I said, so from 82 to now, 42 years plus, and pretty close to that same location. And now my son's in with me, so that's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Back to college again.
Okay.
So you had a scholarship for college.
Yeah.
Now you got to pay for medical school. How does that work? And explain it. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I was, like I said, I was very fortunate to have college paid for. And so during the summer, I would work. When Daddy was still part of the school system, I'd work during the summer, sometimes up at the school I was actually the guy that was repainting the bathrooms from the people who did graffiti on the bathrooms and cleaning up the gum that was stuck on and I'm like, during school, I'm like, you guys, y'all don't do that, okay? Because I had to clean it up. But anyway, so I think it was my sophomore year in college, we won our conference in baseball and got into the NCAA baseball playoffs. And the previous summer, I had worked I'd gotten a job at a tire company. And so I changed tires, rotated tires, all that sort of stuff. Worked on cars. And I would wear my gray, we call them gray nasties. And at the Citadel, this is your everyday, gray uniform. And of course, if you work in a car place, they really get nasty. So it made it very appropriate. So I worked there, but there was a brewery south of Warner Robins that it was a Pabst Blue Ribbon brewery that I had applied for a job there. Well, they had offered me a job after my sophomore year. Well, it got delayed because we were in the NCAA playoffs. And so we were playing partly into the summer. We ended up getting beat by, I think, North Carolina State and South Carolina, which, at the Citadel, we had one baseball coach, and most of those other teams had 13 baseball coaches.
Wow.
They had as many baseball coaches as players. But our one baseball coach was pretty good. Anyway, so I eventually did get on at Pabst Blue Ribbon. They make beer. And so during the summer, I would work there. And I would usually work there, and through the entire summer, I might have a day or two off. You'd work. They were paying me $8 an hour, which was more money than I've ever seen in my life. And if you worked Saturdays, it was time and a half. If you worked Sundays, it was double time. So I saved almost every penny that I could. So by the time I got to dental school, I had saved about $7,000, which is not a lot of money in today's world, but back then it was a lot of money. It was enough to pay for almost the first year. And so then I would still work during the summers, even while I was in dental school. And back then, you were off during the summers of dental school. Now I think they do it a little bit different, but back then that's the way they did it. Pretty much 4 years, but you were off during the summer. So I was able to save some money there, and then, like I said, going into my sophomore year, my second year of dental school, my wife had a job in North Augusta teaching. She was teaching second grade, and she was knocking down about $700 a month. So we were,
living the high life.
We were living high. There were months we literally had $5 to $10 left over, and we were good. Then we could go to the Chinese place and get the poo-poo platter, that sort of thing. But so we were, we made it work. Made it work. I did get some loans. So I did. So to balance everything out the rest of the years, I got dental loans that we paid off over time. So that's kind of how we made that work. They didn't get they didn't get our loans didn't get forgiven or
Right,
whatever.
right.
We actually paid for them.
You paid for them.
We paid for them. So
Opening a practice probably wasn't inexpensive either, and you did that
you
early.
know, I was I was so opposed to borrowing money. Of course, like I said, money was expensive back then. But you don't know that. You're not.
It is what it was.
Yeah, it was what it was. Yeah. So so I remember going to the bank and borrowing. When I first started, I borrowed $25,000, which seemed like so much money, to equip this building I was renting. Okay, so then a year later, I go to the bank to buy property, build a building, and buy a house. And they lumped it all in one fell swoop, and they made they had what they call a downtown development authority loan, which they could loan you money, and it was discounted it was tax free to whoever lent it to you. So by then the rates had come down to about 16%, and so since it was tax free to the lender, you could get 11%. Mm-hmm. So I got 11% loan and thought I was stealing money.
You were at that time. Yeah.
You were at that time.
Almost half price.
Yeah, almost half price. And so just cracking that nut every month, just working and doing that, and just kept at it.
When you first started in your practice, what was your philosophy? What did you want to do different in dentistry, or where did you come from?
I was Christian. I was saved when I was 9 years old. I remember it was Easter Sunday. I was 9 years old. 1963. I was baptized on Mother's Day, and I tried my best to do everything I knew to do as much as I could, as what I understand a Christian should do. And of course, I think a lot of it was kind of works based. You know, you do, Christians do this, and do this. They don't do this, and this, and so you try to treat people the way you want to be treated, and that's what I tried to do. We were involved in church, taking our kids to church. We got involved in a ministry called Trace Diaz, which actually was, I think it came out of the Catholic Church, the Curcio type movement. And so we went through that. I was 33 years old at the time. I went through, I guess it was 88, something like that. And I had such an encounter with God. I knew I'd never be the same again. During this weekend. And I mean, you know, I'd try to do what God wanted me to do, and you know, you just feel like you disappoint him most of the time, or you just can't live. You just can't. You know, you're just doing the best you can. You're just trying to do what you think is right. But I remember that weekend, God just totally overwhelmed me with his love. Just because he chose to, and for no other reason. Had nothing to do with anything I did or anything else. And I knew from that moment on I'd never be the same again. Because I told you how shy I was. And up until that point, sharing my faith with somebody was just, I mean, it was hard enough just to talk to people about baseball, a crown on number 4, or whatever, you know, or anything. But I guess part of me coming out of my shell, so to speak, had to do with knowing that I was totally accepted by God based on what Christ had done for me. And that, because I think part of shyness is insecurity about what other people think, And, if you're, at least for my case, that was probably it. I was afraid to say a whole lot because what would somebody think about me, what I said, whatever. But then when you realize that God loves you just because he's chose to, and that he accepts you, and it doesn't matter if nobody else accepts you. The God who spoke the world into creation accepts you, and nothing else matters. It does something to you. And I think one of the things it does to you is I went from being very shy and not really being able to share my faith to I'll talk to anybody. Listen, just you can't really shut up about it.
Well, can we relate that to the dentistry and your patient in the chair, perhaps with some implement in their mouth?
And you have the opportunity to talk. You do have a little bit of a
upper hand.
Well, I would say you have a what's the word? There's a term I'm looking for.
Captive audience.
Captive audience. That's it. You have a captive audience, and they can't really talk back. And so I've freely shared my faith with patients. If we're doing something that's not necessarily routine, extraction, root canal, something, surgery on somebody, I ask them, I said, do you mind if I pray for you? In 43 years, I've had, up until just a couple months ago, I'd only had 2 people that said no. Well, about 15 minutes later, one of them changed his mind and actually explained to me what his, and without going into detail, he was in a well, I don't think I need to go into that, but basically he had reasons why he was not religious, so to speak. But he said he would let me pray for him. So, and this, I mean, I had not done anything. I had gone in somewhere else and come back, and he had some time to sit there and think about it. So we talked about it a little bit, and then he said, yeah, you can pray for me. The other lady, was a lady, and I think she's from Russia, and I don't know that she totally understands everything that I say, but she's the one that she doesn't want me praying for. And then about 2 months ago, I had a young lady in there. She was 13, and I was getting ready to take some teeth out for orthodontic reasons, and I asked her, I said, do you mind if I pray for you? And she looked at me, she said, I'm an atheist. I said, really? And her mother had just left the room, and I thought I should have asked her mother, but her being 13, everything I didn't, I kind of said, really? So where do you think all this came from? She said science. I said, really? So, okay. So anyway, I still prayed for her. I just didn't do it out loud. So I don't know where that's going, but anyway.
So 43 years you've served the community, bringing healthy smiles, and I am a benefactor of your great work.
Yeah.
And
hope you're still doing well.
I am doing very well.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
What's it like to have? What are the things that you reflect on after 43 years of dentistry and serving those people that have sat in your chair and you prayed for them and you've worked on them? And
I mean, you make a lot of friends. I mean, there's a lot of folks that, they just, now people are like, you're not retiring anytime soon, are you? I'm like, well, I don't plan on it. I mean, I still feel pretty good. I feel like I can still, it's kind of one of those things. I'll just take, for example, root canals, has a terrible, people say, yeah, I'd rather have a root canal than whatever. We figured up, I've probably done 25 or 30,000 root canals. I don't know, something something crazy like that. And there's probably 4 or 5 that were just really difficult. They were just so infected that it was difficult to get the patient numb. It just weren't pleasant. Most of the time, people sleep through them.
Mm.
They're just like, they've been hurting for 2 or 3 days. You numb them up. They're not hurting anymore. They fall asleep.
Mm.
They just, but just trying to, and I've got patients that evidently the dentistry in the UK is not great. And I've got patients that were over there and they come to me and they're like, they won't go anywhere else. You just, I don't know. You try to put yourself in the chair and treat people the way you want to be treated. It's just, it doesn't seem like rocket science to me, but,
well, I can't, I'm not sure that travel is the same from England to Warner Robins Bonaire, but I can say that I flew from Maine
yes, you did.
to sit in your chair.
Yes,
and I would say that when I walked in, sat there for the first time, I was sitting in the waiting room, the music's playing. It's music that I'm very at home with, and just warm, inviting, peaceful place, and everybody that greeted me there was warm, peaceful, and inviting, and it felt like family.
Good.
Being there.
Good.
Yeah, it was a very
that's what we strive to do.
And your creativity. I mean, I'm coming in from out of state, and I'm a 3-step process probably with the procedure that I had done, and you figured out how to do it in 2.
Yeah,
saved me a flight. Yeah.
Well, it's they call it the practice of dentistry. I mean, you get all sorts of situations, and no 2 are exactly alike, and so you try to sit there, and that's part of the fun to me, though, is taking a case and trying to come up with several solutions. And because I tell patients all the time, I said, look, my job is not to tell you what to do. My job is to give you options. Okay, I don't know what your situation is. All I know is I'm going to ask you some questions, and then based on what you're telling me, I'm going to come up with some plans. And then based on those plans I give you, you tell me what you want to do. And we go from there. You ask all the questions you want to do and ask and go from there. So, and I tell them, I said, you work for me. Excuse me. I said that backwards. I work for you.
Right.
I said, you walked in the door, you can leave anytime you want to, So anyway.
Yeah. Projects. You are a project man. You're not just, when you're not building somebody's teeth, improving their dental health, you've got your hands in a piece of machinery, the dirt, the ground.
I love being outside, and I love construction. I do micro construction all day long. Micro in the dentistry.
Oh, okay.
You're building bridges. You're doing all these things. It's micro construction.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. So when I'm home, I'm doing macro construction.
It's your stress
I'm
relief.
cutting trees down. I'm cutting them into big pieces of wood and putting them together and building. A few years ago, there's some land I was clearing next to where my mother and dad lived, and trying to figure out what I want to do with this land. I think Grand was in college, and it was so thick you just couldn't see very far into this property. So I just went in there and started clearing it, just cutting down anything small, leaving big trees, cutting down small things. And then once I got it cleared a little bit, I could kind of look at it, and some people have a knack for decorating a room or a house. I don't have that knack, but I can look at a piece of land and I can kind of visualize what would be pretty. And so once I got it to a point, I thought this would be a really great place for a pond. So not knowing much about anything, I had a backhoe. By then I had acquired an old backhoe. So I started out to dig this pond with a backhoe. Shows you how dumb I was, whatever. So during this process, I'm pushing a tree over with the back part of my backhoe, and I get this major crack in this huge piece of the backhoe, one of the largest parts of it. And 1-inch hydraulic hose bust. It gets all over me. I get soaked hydraulic. So I get a guy out there. Name is Bubba. And Bubba is a great guy.
Oh, we got ourselves a Bubba here.
Bubba, got a Bubba. Bubba is awesome. Anyway, so I get Bubba out. His name happens to be on the tractor because get this serviced here. So I call Bubba. I don't know who else to do. So I call Bubba. He comes out and he says, Dr. Joe. And I've known Bubba for now 10 years. I've tried my best to get him to call me Joe. I said, Bubba, just call me Joe. Dr. Joe, you earned that degree, and I just can't call you. And I mean, I have tried. He just calls me Dr. Joe. But anyway, Bubba came out and he said, Dr. Joe, I'm going to see what I can do about fixing your backhoe. So he says, while I've got it, it's going to take me a while to fix it. He said, let me bring you an excavator to rent. Well, I didn't know enough about machinery to know what an excavator is. I mean, my 3-year-old grandson knows what an excavator is. I didn't know what an excavator was. He brought me out this old beat up excavator. I started working with that thing and I thought, oh my gosh, how silly was I to try to think I could build a pond with the backhoe when you have an excavator. You can go to a tree, push the thing right over. I mean, at one point when I was clearing for the pond, I got where I could push over 5 trees, cut them up in 20-foot sections, put them in a burn pile in about an hour. 5 trees an hour. Wow. There was a lot of trees. So anyway, long story short, when Bubba finally got the backhoe fixed and brought it back to me, he said, why don't you just buy this excavator from me? Now I'm going to tell you, this excavator already had over 4,000 hours on it at the time. Didn't have a door on it, didn't have a front on it. It's not the safest backhoe in the world. I mean, excavator, but at any rate, it was working okay. So long story short, I ended up buying that used beat up excavator, which I still use today. And I just can't tell you how much work I can get done on that excavator. When I was building the pond, one of my friends from church stopped by one day and he looked out there and he hollered at me. He said, it ought to be against the law for a man to have that much fun. So,
yeah, it is a happy place for you.
Yeah, it's just I enjoy building stuff. I enjoy.
Well, your pond expanded. I mean, the pond is how big?
The pond's only about 3 acres, between 2 and 3 acres, something like that. I moved. It was kind of crazy. When I was moving dirt, I procured an old dump truck too. Back in 2008, when a lot of businesses went out of business, there was a lot of equipment out there that people couldn't keep, and so anyway, that's actually how I got a backhoe, and I bought a little small dump truck too. But while I was moving dirt out of the pond to dig the pond, I started keeping track of how many loads I would move. I don't know why, just because I did. But anyway, on a great day, I could move 50 dump truck loads of dirt. It would take about 10 hours. That's filling it up, keeping the excavator running, jumping off the excavator, getting in the dump truck, going dumping it, come back and forth. I could do about 50. And I remember one day I had worked from 7 to 5, and I was thinking, I've been out here 10 hours. And I wasn't thinking, I've been out here for 10 hours. I was thinking, it doesn't get dark till 9:30. I got 4 more hours I can work. So I guess you're enjoying it when you're doing that.
I would say so.
And God bless my wife. She was, she had things going on at the time too. And I may have spent too much time doing that. But anyway, we got it finished.
3-acre pond. And then you built
a pavilion. Mm-hmm. We call it the pavilion. It's about a 30 by 45. It's just a timber frame type construction, not mortise and tendon like
Some do.
like some do.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it. I think that's great.
Right,
I think it's great. But I hooked mine together with 1/4-inch steel and big old bolts.
Sure.
So it was fun to build. It was fun to build. And
you built
with the fireplace.
What was your vision for the pond and the pavilion, the end goal?
Well, for my family to be able to, it's just sit out there, enjoy it, have a fire. I built a little kitchen out there. We grill out there. We cook. We have office parties out there. It's just a nice place, especially in the fall, to be able to have a fireplace. Built a big fireplace there. And it's just open all the way around, except for where the fireplace is and where the kitchen area is. But it's just an open area to just sit out and enjoy and gather and cook. And kids love to play out there. Built a swing set out there beside it, so all the grandkids have a place to swing and all that sort of stuff. So I love projects. I enjoy projects. I can't sit still very long.
And from what I can see, the projects are a gathering spot.
Yes.
Another project on your property, your gym, maybe?
The gym. Yeah, that's back in I guess 2000. I was 46, but in 2000, when I moved back to Warner Robins, there was a bunch of guys that we loved to get together and play basketball. It was always hard to find a place. When my dad was living, we could usually get in one of the high school gyms on a Sunday afternoon or something like that. And then, they kind of got where you couldn't do that anymore. We would try to find a place to play, and I remember the guys joking one day about, why don't we just build our own gym? We have so much trouble finding a place. Well, one of the guys that I played with, his dad actually owned the 4 acres right next to my house, and he lived back behind on another road, but he owned those 4 acres, and I offered to buy it from him. And we eventually got those 4 acres. And that's another story, but I won't go into that. But we ended up getting that, and so it was going to be an outside tennis court with a hoop at both ends, And then we got to looking at metal buildings and try to figure all that out. And so, so we ended up building a gym, a high school regulation type gym. And so we did it as economically as we could, but I put money in the floor because, like I said, at the time I was 46 years old and I didn't need to be pounding on pavement anymore, but I loved, I said I played football and baseball in college. When we weren't in there doing that, we were in the gym playing basketball. I loved it. Absolutely still love it. But I'm a short, bald-headed white dude, can't jump. But when I was in dental school, Payne College was right next door, which was a black college. We had an outside basketball court, and this was when I was married, and I was the lone white guy out there. I was playing out there, like I said, I was the only white guy out there, and the rule was no autopsy, no foul, which, so I'd played college football, so okay, whatever, let's go. But every now and then my wife would look out there and still see me standing, so she knew I was okay. But I love basketball. I love it. And so we ended up building this. All my kids played basketball, so we ended up building this gym on the adjacent property next to our house, and have thoroughly enjoyed it, and have had, we've had cheerleaders use it. We've had volleyball people use it. We've had pickleball now is a big deal. Pickleball people. We still have a group that comes and plays a couple times a week. During the COVID, we kind of had to shut it down a little while, but my wife's actually given me permission to go back out there and play a little bit
Great.
now. But after the several surgeries I've had, she says, tell them they cannot let you fall. And it's really,
because there will be an autopsy and there are fouls.
Yeah, it's not a pretty sight, really. Me playing basketball anymore at my age, but I still love doing it. You know, it's fun.
A couple of side stories.
Okay.
Is there a story to tell about sneaking some of your buddies out of the Citadel?
Huh. Yeah, well, there might be one. At the Citadel, you're pretty much stuck there. It's a little bit like prison, but it's not. But if you make really good grades, you can get a night out, during the week to kind of go out and, that sort of thing. So I didn't have a car. My roommate, my buddy, I was telling you that, he was my roommate. He had a car. And I remember one night they wanted to go out. So so I had a pass. So they hop in the trunk of Doug's car, and we try to, of course, now the car is kind of like this, and they're making so much racket. I go up to the front gate to drive out, and they're making too much racket. And so I had to drive around back behind one of the buildings and open the trunk, and they're like, "What? We're not outside?" I'm like, "Y'all gonna get me in trouble." Said, "Y'all making too much racket. Y'all couldn't." So anyway, long story short, they were quiet enough to where we could actually leave. But I had a pass to get out, and they didn't. So we just go out. Sometimes you had to go AWOL every now and again just to keep your sanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Good friend of mine, Pat Burns, went to West Point, and he would come home for some sanity.
Yeah. Well, the Citadel has been called the West Point of the South.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, but
so something I wanted to come back to was Citadel. You didn't have any military requirement after that?
The Citadel is one of the military schools, unlike, I guess, Air Force Academy or West Point, is after your sophomore year, you can decide whether you want a commission or not. Okay. If you get a commission, they will pay you, I think, your junior, senior year. They'll pay you so much a month or whatever. But even if you don't accept that commission, you still take ROTC. So I could have gotten out after 4 years and gone to the military and been like a second lieutenant. But you don't have to take the commission. So you had a choice. That was one thing about the Citadel. And since I was going into dental school, I suppose I could have gone into the military and gone to dental school too and have them pay for some of it, but that was just not where I was headed. So, and after your sophomore year in college, you're not sure exactly what you're going to do anyway. So, but
when you were younger, would there have been a reason ever to trade a football for a baton?
I don't know where you got that story from. Well, when I was, and I don't remember this. I was told this story, but one of the coaches that was coaching with Daddy at the time told the story I'm about to tell you now. At my football banquet, my senior year in high school. Okay, so you can figure out how this went over. Okay, so all right. So first of all, I grew up in a sorority house. I've got 4 sisters, so that's pretty much a sorority house. And Daddy, back then, they didn't have Dick's Sporting Goods. They didn't have these, if you wanted something out of the ordinary, you ordered it. If you wanted something ordinary, you ordered it. Well, and I don't remember.
You didn't order it online either.
You didn't order it online. No. Nobody knew what online was. They were looking for the line, But I don't know how old I was. I don't remember. I could have been 4 or 5 6. I'm not real sure. But Daddy had ordered me a leather junior football. I mean, you just, like I said, you couldn't go to the store and buy it. It was a leather junior football. And I think he was excited as could be. Of course, I mean, I like I said, I'm his only son. He's a football coach. He's got 4 daughters. Okay, well, he didn't have all 4 daughters at the time. He only had 3 at the time, I guess. But my younger sister had not been born yet. So the day comes and he gives me this football. Okay, so I go outside and I'm playing with this football. And I go down the street. And evidently a while later, I come back and no football, but I've got a baton in my hand and I'm twirling this baton.
They were fascinating.
I mean,
They were fascinating. The glitter. They had
I could have been a majorette.
Rubber on the ends. They had some of them had the fringes on the end. I mean, you could spin.
I don't think there were fringes back then. They weren't in the fringes. It was just a basic baton. And the story that was told me, and like I said, I don't remember this, but evidently Daddy said, son, what'd you do with your football? Well, I traded it for this baton with the little girl down the street. So I went back and traded back. Got the football back.
Did you have some instructions?
Yeah, he gave me some instructions on getting it back. So anyway, I got the football back. But that story was told at my senior high school banquet. You know, that went over so well. But anyway.
What are you fixing to do with your life going on forward here? Because you're always fixing to do something.
Yeah, that's what we do in the South.
You fixing to
We're
do it?
fixing to fix it. I still want to practice. I enjoy doing that. I still have my projects. I've got 8 of my 9 grandkids right around there. We involved in a church. I try to anybody that I listen, I'll tell them what I understand the grace of God to be and how much God loves them, because I've told my kids this. I said, you know, if I could somehow pour into you how much God loves you and accepts you, I'll do it. But I can't. Only God can do that. But I know that if you know that, there's nothing that this world can throw at you that's going to totally upset your apple cart. It's just not. I mean, because you know He's got it handled, whatever it is. And, you know, things happen. I mean, when I was 49 years old and I got the message that my dad had a brain tumor and didn't have but a few weeks to live, he was my best friend. I mean, I was crushed. I was crushed. Because, I mean, of course, you know, in a family with 5 girls, mom and my 4 sisters, it was me and Daddy. They didn't go fishing with us at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning every time we would leave. It was me and Daddy. And spent all the time with him at football. And I mean, we had a great relationship. I mean, I'm blessed to have had such a wonderful father. I think to a real sense it helps you to understand how much your Heavenly Father loves you and cares for you. And I know not everybody has that. And but even if you had a terrible father or terrible example, God does love you more than you can begin to fathom. And that's one thing I try to tell people whenever I have an opportunity. And sometimes at work, you never know. I mean, people come in to the office, and you don't know what they're going through. They may have just gotten terrible news. You just don't know. So just the other day, this lady came in and I was talking to her, and she was saying something about, you prayed for me several years ago, and I just want to tell you how much that meant to me. And I said, well, I'm glad. And then she told me something she was going through. And so I asked her, I said, do you mind if I quit? She said, no, absolutely. And so I prayed, and when we got through, she looked at me and she said, that is the most beautiful prayer I've ever heard. I said, well, I don't even know what I said. I said, because it's not me. I mean, God wants to speak through us. I mean, and who gets the credit for that? He does. I mean, I'm just
a vessel. I
just want to be the vessel. You know, I'm not the water. I'm just the vessel. I'm not the life. He's the life, you know, but he wants to flow through us to shed life and hope to you and to whomever. So, I mean, those are things that bring the greatest joy to me. I mean, I love out building. I love being outside. Right now, my youngest son and I are building a greenhouse, and I'm having a wonderful time with Josh out building. Josh is so creative. He's the design guy. I'm pretty much the grunt work. Just tell me how you want it. We'll figure it out. We'll get it built. And so we're having a good time doing that right now. So
we've covered a lot. There's more we could cover.
Okay. How much time you got? Oh, Lord.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you thought in your mind you'd love to share? Again, we covered a lot.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, I was so shy that I just wouldn't say much. But I mean, once God overwhelmed me like he did, it's like I can't shut up about it. And I would be, not everybody wants to listen. Not everybody's ready to listen. Not everybody wants to hear. But at some point, everybody has to wonder, what am I here for? What's this all about? You know, everybody talks about the world and all, and I'm like, I said, y'all realize we live on a speck, right? I mean, it's a speck in the universe. The fact that any of it works to any normalcy is absolutely miraculous. How can you, even the Bible talks about, you can't look at nature and not know God made it. He made it. I mean, you can think there was some explosion somewhere at some point in time. If it happened that way, somebody did it.
Somebody lit the match.
Somebody did it. It all had to come from somewhere, you know. And so you have to wonder, well, what's the point of all this? What are we doing? What are we doing? And you can look at a lot of different philosophies or whatever, but there's only been one person that I know that's ever predicted their death, their burial, and resurrection, and actually pulled it off. And the world says, don't put all your eggs in one basket. All my eggs are in that basket. There's not another basket that can hold my eggs. That's just not. And I just it just seems so commonsensical to me. in a world which I'm not sure common sense is as common as it used to be. I don't know. But I just feel like if you sat with someone that may be totally opposite thinking than you and just talked about some things. Why do you believe what you believe? Because, and I've talked with Benjamin about this, and everybody has faith or trust in something or someone. Everybody does. I don't care who it is. They may trust in their money, their own intellect, their own physical abilities. They may trust in the government. But everybody trusts in something. But the question is, what you have placed your trust or hope in, is it worthy of the trust you've placed in it?
There it is.
That's the bottom line. Is it worthy of the trust you placed in it? If it's not, you might want to rethink it. But there's a song out now. I'm not going to sing it. I can't sing a lick. But it says, all we really need is Jesus. It talks about the world and chaos and all that. And all we really need is Jesus. Mm. There is nothing else. There is no one else that has the answers to the questions that we have.
Mm. And it can bring the peace.
Yes. Yeah. He is our peace. And one thing that I share when I have an opportunity to talk with, and I love talking to men, because I am one, and I feel like I can relate better to men, even though I may understand women that much more than most men because I grew up with them, but about that much is about it. But one thing that I try to share with, and this is something I believe is scriptural, and I'm not a theologian or anything, but I think you can go and look, and the Bible will bear this out. Is that, we talk about identity a lot these days, okay? And people identify as this, and this. And the Bible only has two options for your identity, only two. And the first one is you're a sinner in Adam. You didn't do anything to become a sinner except be born. But you were born in Adam. So that's what you got. And then the other one is you're a saint in Jesus. That's the only two options. You're either in Adam or in Jesus. That's it. That's all. That's the only two options for your identity, what you're identified with. And we're in a world which people identify you by what you do, your behavior. And I tell a silly story about a frog. Said, now, if I wanted to be a frog, how would I be a frog? If I jumped around, hopped, and ate flies, and acted like a frog, would that make me a frog? No. It might make me a lunatic, but it won't make me a frog. So how could I only be a frog? How could I be a frog? There's only one option. If I was born a frog. So birth determines identity in a world where we think behavior does. Behavior doesn't determine identity. Behavior should express your identity. Since we are children of God, that's how we should walk. It's what the Bible talks about, But your identity is by birth. We were born into this world as sinners in Adam. Jesus said we must be born again. And when we're born again, the Bible talks about we have been baptized into Christ Jesus. And that baptism is like a dyeing process, like you were to dye a piece of cloth. You would take a white piece of cloth and you dip it into a red dye. It takes on the identity of the red dye. So we have been dipped into Christ Jesus, and it is now his life that is to express through us. And I think we get confused sometimes, and we try to live as Christ wants us to live. And as I understand Scripture, and you're going to have to think about this as I say it, God made no provision for Joe to live the Christian life. But he made every provision for Christ to live the life through me as the vessel. Because only Jesus can live the Christian life. Because we can't. We would just be imitating. I don't think he wants us imitating. So how do we do that? By faith. That's how we do anything, by faith. By believing that it's him doing it through us. Because the Bible says, I died, I became a new creation, and now he's living his life through us. Do we do it perfectly? No. No, we don't, because we're still living in human bodies right now. But the Bible talks about us having our minds renewed with the truth. And the truth is that my behavior should line up with my identity. And so we need to be reminded that we are, as Christians, that we are children of the living God. That's who we are. That's what God did. He made us holy. He made us righteous. I don't have to behave to make myself righteous. My behavior should be because I'm righteous. Because God made me that way. And who gets the glory for that? He does, because he's doing it through us. It's not something I have to work up or whatever. I was sharing with a friend of mine a couple years ago. This guy had been a deacon, an elder, and all this, and we were talking about God being disappointed with you or mad at you or whatever. And he says, yeah, I feel like God's disappointed with me all the time. And I said, can I share something with you? He said, sure. I said, you're going to have to ask God about this, but I believe it's absolutely impossible for God to be disappointed with you, a Christian, one of his children. And he looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, well, what is disappointment? Well, you expect something and you didn't get it. I said, it's unfulfilled expectation. I said, you can have unfulfilled expectation of yourself. You can have unfulfilled expectation of your wife, your son, your brother, sister, whatever. God has no unfulfilled expectations of you. He knows your birth. He knows your death. He knows everything in between. And he says, that's my son. I love him. He has no unfulfilled expectations of you. So I believe he can't be disappointed with you because he has everything he knows everything that's going to ever happen. And he's already taken care of it. So what does that do for you?
Freedom.
Absolutely. Where are you going to run? Into his arms. If you think he's mad at you or disappointed with you, you're going to run the opposite direction. He wants you to run to him. And so he has made everything possible so that that's where we want to run. Because that's the only safe place is him. And so I believe that God is, all of our sins have been forgiven. We are forgiven people. It's part of our identity, just like our righteousness. It's a gift. It's been given to us. It's part of our identity. It's part of who we are. We're forgiven people. We don't, and people say, well, and I know that everybody has different philosophies about this, but you look at the truth and say, well, I sinned yesterday, so I'm begging God to forgive me. I said, God's already forgiven you of that. You don't have to beg him to forgive you of that. But if you want to acknowledge it, you can say, God, you have made me holy and righteous. You have given me the life of Christ. That behavior that I just did or whatever does not line up with who I am. And thank you that you've already forgiven me of that. And please help me not to keep walking there. Please remind me of who I am. Because the war takes place in the mind. That's where the war is. The enemy knows our weaknesses. He knows our major highways, if you will. Okay? God wants us to make him our major highway and let these grow up into high weeds. So we're not walking that way anymore. So, and I think, that can be a lifelong experience for us, because none of us are going to ever reach perfection. We're not going to. When we're poured out, Jesus doesn't always come out.
Yeah.
But if we will take our thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ and remember what he did for us, what he continues to do on a daily basis, that he wants to express his life through us. And it's him, it's not us. He gets the glory. Anything that he does through us, it's all him. It's all him. And I remember years ago, a guy saying, well, I just got to go to church to get my battery recharged. And I thought in my mind, no, we don't have to get our battery recharged. The nuclear reactor lives inside of us. And nuclear reactor is not even a good really term, but it's, as our understanding, the God who spoke the world into existence lives in us. We don't need recharging. We need reminding of who he is and what he's done and what he's done for us and what he wants to do through us. And that he is who he said he is, and that we are just passing through, and we are but dust.
And to dust we shall
and
be.
to dust we shall. But for all eternity, we will be with him. And all of those that we've loved, my dad, my mom, all those that have gone before us, we'll spend eternity with. And he is our hope. And this world needs hope. And they need Jesus. And they need to know that God of all creation loves them more than they can begin to fathom. That's what makes a difference, I believe, in people's lives. Knowing that. That's what gets you up in the morning. That's what gets you through the day. That's what life. He is life. That's what it's all about, in my view.
It's a great view, and I appreciate it very much. The wisdom that you passed on and continue to pass on is wonderful. If I had a brother from another mother, it would be Joe Sumrall, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Grateful that our family has been brought together.
Yep, I am too. I talk about that all the time. I talk about my patients. They say, "Well, when are you going to Maine again?" And all this sort of stuff, and I tell them, and I said, it's amazing how God works. I said, there's this little gal from Georgia, this young man from Maine. I said, we call it the Appalachian Connection. I said, if there's two young folks that just ever looked like they were meant to be together, and how God worked it out. I mean,
there you go.
just worked it out.
Yeah. So if people wanted to connect with you, they could probably get to you through what means?
I check my text pretty well. I have an email.
Great. So we could post those.
I know how to find it.
Nice.
I do look at my email.
Yeah.
I don't always. Well, you get all these emails, but emails from folks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm open to share whatever, whenever.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for listening. If you have any suggestions for topics and or guests, we would love people to reach out to us. We want you, Joe, to know that we love you.
Love you too.
We love you, Benjamin. We love everybody out there.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.